Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. All eyes were on the FA Cup final when Chelsea and Liverpool clashed at Wembley. After the 90 minutes, the game finished 0-0, but the XG showed that both sides were wasteful, with Liverpool eventually winning on penalties. But what tactics did both managers use? Let's take a look. And if you want to take your enjoyment of the game up, I'm happy to be working with my fantasy football app of choice yet again, Spitch. Spitch is my favorite fantasy football app, as not only can you play for free and still win cash prizes, the scoring system is much more interesting. It's not just goals and assists, so players also get points for passes, tackles and interceptions, meaning that all 11 players are crucial. Even better, Spitch's overall scores and prizes is reset each week. So, if you join today for example, this week you have as much chance of winning a prize as anyone who started playing on match day 1. So, download Spitch for absolutely free through the link in the description below to give it a go, and to help support the channel. Also join the FMS EPL community on Spitch, link down below, and I'll shout out the best performers. Currently it's available in the UK, Germany and Austria, 18 years old and up, and you need ID to fully register. We'll begin with Liverpool on the ball as they were slightly more dominant, and Chelsea's defence was often interesting. Early in the game, Liverpool caused Chelsea troubles in two main ways. When Chelsea were looking to press high, we often saw Lukaku slightly more withdrawn, meaning Mount and Pulisic were often drawn narrow on the press, and this would naturally mean it was up to James and Alonso to press higher up the pitch. However, with Chelsea having a slightly higher line, we often saw Diaz and Salah staying high and extremely wide, and this would begin to draw the wide centre-backs out of position. And we consistently saw Liverpool looking to switch the ball out quickly to the wingers and isolate the wide centre-backs against the wingers so they could use their trickery against them. Through the centre, Chelsea were naturally 3 versus 2 down, meaning that at first Tuchel wanted Lukaku to be deeper to cover the ball into Henderson. This would mean that even if Thiago did look to drop in to be the second outlet, Kovacic could follow, leaving Jorginho to cover in behind him. However, Lukaku could at times be drawn higher, meaning that Henderson would be free to receive, as the Chelsea pivots were reluctant to press, knowing that they were at a disadvantage. To make things worse, Mane was consistently dropping from false 9 into the midfield to exacerbate the overload, often making a 4 versus 2, and he could either receive deep in the midfield or between the lines. So initially Chelsea looked to adapt by bringing both of their wingers narrow to form a midfield box. However, in these scenarios the space was now out wide, with Robertson and Trent moving higher and wider. But a pause in the game gave Tuchel time to shuffle his deck. When defending, he now switched to a 4-2-3-1, with Pulisic as the 10, Alonso high on the left and Rudiger at left back. This allowed them to have an extra man in midfield helping to cover Henderson, and he could then look to press any midfielders who were dropping into this region, whilst Kovacic and Jorginho remained deeper. At the same time, the Liverpool fullbacks wouldn't have as much space, as they would now be pressed by the Chelsea wingers. This shape worked for them better, though now it was the Liverpool centre-backs who had the space, and they would often look to push higher into the midfield to try and draw a Chelsea midfielder and create an overload that way. But although in settled defence, Chelsea would look to switch to a 5-4-1 to match up Liverpool's front 5, if Liverpool attacked quickly, Chelsea could still be in their back 4 shape. In these situations, the front 3 would be narrow, forcing the Chelsea back 4 to contract much more centrally, and Mount could be slow to track back, and Robertson in particular could be the man over on the left to get into great crossing situations, but to no avail. But what did Chelsea do on the ball? From goal kicks, Liverpool's press was often effective and forced Chelsea long often, leading to turnovers, as we see with Mendy attempting almost 3 times as many long balls as Alisson. And in open play, we initially saw a similar situation, with Liverpool's front 3 pressing Chelsea's back 3, backed up by their fullbacks pressing the wing backs. And unlike Chelsea, because Liverpool had the numerical advantage in the midfield, they could afford to commit 2 of their midfielders onto the Chelsea pivots, making central progression extremely difficult. This was made worse as they have a traditional forward in Lukaku, who is less willing to drop in and help out in the midfield. As a result, there was now more onus on the ball-playing Thiago Silva to look to beat a man when being pressed in the defence, so that he could then potentially move higher up the pitch, and perhaps draw a Liverpool midfielder and somewhat even things up in the midfield that way. But the wide regions is where Chelsea could have more success, as due to the wingers pressing narrow, they would have advantages out wide. So if the Chelsea wingers were high and wide, and the Liverpool fullbacks were pinned back, the wingbacks could then be found. If they subsequently drew up the Liverpool fullbacks, the Chelsea wingers could then look to make a run in behind to try and create. But as the game went on, we began to see the Chelsea wide men drop in earlier into this half space, which would now create problems for the fullback, who would be 2 versus 1 down, as the centre back couldn't cover due to the presence of Lukaku, so they had more success in this manner. But high up the pitch, Chelsea were effective at getting into great situations, particularly through Alonso down the left. Again, this is primarily because the Liverpool wingers tend to be extremely high, and like Liverpool, Chelsea would look to form a front 5 high up. So time and again, Alonso would be free to receive switches down the left hand side, and when Trent looked to confront him, he could then play in Mount. Alternatively, Mount could drop in to receive the ball and draw Trent to then play in Alonso, and Chelsea got into many good situations in this manner. Overall, Liverpool did create the better chances and on another day could have finished this in normal time. But Chelsea weren't slouches either, and they could have done the same. But this could potentially be the second of a quadruple for Liverpool, but I want to know your prediction for how many trophies Liverpool will end up with at the end of the season below. And for the managerial tactical score, it was an even battle of wits, with Tuchel's adaptation on the fly being impressive, whilst Klopp's side was still able to create chances, meaning that both managers earn a 7. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you might enjoy the content available on my Patreon. Not only does Patreon help to support the continued production of content, as I am a one-man team, but it also gives you early access to videos that will come on the channel. You'll also get exclusive videos, get to vote on polls, and so much more. And it's cheaper than ever, no longer having a tier system, so everyone on the Patreon gets access to all the content. So head over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple to check it out. And a special thanks to my patrons including Adam Keating, BJ and Ignacio Paves. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.